Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. Please be patient. We'll be starting with the flag salute, welcome, and public comment. So if anybody out there doesn't want to speak, we'll be getting with you in just a few minutes.
So how do we do with breakfast? Is it good?
It was huge.
It was big.
Yeah, it was big. It was different. Never had a burrito like that before.
That's what he calls it, it's what he said is a burrito?
Yeah, well, that's what Cindy called it, breakfast burrito.
I like his fresh orange juice.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it was very good. We did okay, Max? Yeah.
Actually, all it is, I couldn't eat all mine. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. And Eli, we have public comment.
We have Sean Michael.
Sean, you're on. You got 3 minutes.
I've already listed my comment, but basically I'm having a major problem with motorcycles and quads riding up and down the streets. It sounds like I live in a motocross, and I have tried to ask several of them to please stop it. And if they knew what they were doing was illegal, and I have been threatened with violence, I have been spat at, and my cat has been run over. I was wondering, I've written to all of you and asked about this. So there's my 3 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you, Sean. I do have your letter. I just got it a couple days ago, and I turned it over to the city manager. Actually, somebody else called in yesterday about that, and we will address that. Thank you.
Okay, well, I've made several calls and nobody has ever answered the call, so I resorted to letters. So thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Have a good day, sir. Anybody else?
That is all I see.
Okay. So if anybody out there is listening to this, at any time, just call in and put your hand up, so Eli will, let us know if there's, anybody out there with public comment. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, public. Day two, and we're gonna power through this today. And one thing I just wanted to make sure, and I didn't talk about it yesterday, somewhat inherent, but just so everybody understands the process. So today, once we get, and this whole process, yesterday and today, leads into our budget cycle. So our budget cycle begins in the beginning of February, runs through ultimately getting approved in front of the council by June 30th, before June 30th for the fiscal year, July 1st. The city runs on a 2-year budget cycle. So these priorities that you talk about thus far, ultimately once established as the priorities, will then flow through when we have our resource allocation, because most of these things take resources, and as we're allocating those resources, your priorities are very important. Before we get started, I was kind of looking through this and just wanted to ask a few questions. Again, as facilitator, one of my responsibilities is try to extract these, so I have a clear idea of kind of where we're going. And one other thing, I guess, just to add, and hopefully you had the same thought process last night, talking to Carrie before we began. You know, her mind was kind of going last night, and hopefully yours was too, and I'm sure it was, leading into today, because this session, again, helps us from a staff perspective, from your manager perspective, day to day, and also planning for that. So just to kind of run through this, and I was making some dots here. So bike, and just some of these things weren't real clear to me, so I want to, before we kind of get too far into it, I want to just look at some of these things. So more bike paths. Makes sense, I think, probably, and if it's okay with the council, I'll probably just strike from, because these are strategic priorities, right? If it's okay just to strike more, it's about bike paths, right? I mean, that's really, from a strategic priority perspective, that's what it's about. Is that okay to strike more? Yep, okay.
Just as long as when we say more, like we are planning on doing a bike path on Hatch and Sullivan, that's more bike path because there's no bike path there right now.
Understood, yep, absolutely. Then, and when we get to the implementation, assuming that gets it, part of that implementation may be things like, where's your hot spots? Kind of going down through here, I think these are somewhat, the same, and, as we look through these and maybe consolidate from a policy perspective, updating infrastructure and facilities, adding features to existing facilities, I think all are, part of this updating, right? Because part of updating, adding, I think that's all one thing. Do you agree? Yeah. So, when we look at prioritization, that's all one thing. Widening Utah Trail, south of Joshua Tree National Park. I think it's just all part of this Utah Trail specific plan. So if it's okay, I'll just strike that. Okay. Sewer system, self-explanatory. Same with, Councilmember Klink, to the same point of the bike path. I think flood control is a priority. Then as what we do of that, I think is, as you mentioned before, Hanson Track, Split Rock, et cetera. So if those, okay, we'll combine those as well. Repair bike paths, I think, can strike, because again, it's up here with bike paths, right? Same here with bring businesses back, add jobs. I think that's, all part of economic development plan, master plan, right here. So I think that's going to be a net all, so does that make sense? So you should kind of strike that, because that's all part of the economic development master plan, okay? COVID relief is self-explanatory. Family-oriented businesses, continuing, to helping businesses, I think, is about COVID, I believe, right? So that's already there. So I think all those are all part of one thing, which is Economic Development Master Plan. Project Phoenix, self-explanatory. Again, quality of life, safe routes to school, continuing to bike paths, I think, again, is, it's all about the bike paths, right? So I'm gonna kind of strike that as a subset. It's all about those bike paths.
Yeah, and the safe route to school, that was grant money we were getting from way back from Bush administration. They were doing it back then, wasn't it?
Well, and it's still part of it. So, ATP, Active Transportation Programs, safe routes to school is all part of that.
Oh, okay.
When you hear us talking about ATP, it's the same thing.
Oh, okay, I didn't know they were still doing that. Okay.
So that's all part, and that'll be the funding, how do we pay for it, right? So grant funding, general fund dollars, I mean, those will all be how we implement. Making our community better really wasn't kind of clear when I was reading it this morning from a strategic priority, kind of where that falls. Definitely one of the things I heard as a overarching, I was thinking about this last night, this morning, overarching, and when I put my planning document together, quality of life and safety, I think, were a theme that I heard from each and every one of you in various statements. So, so the overarching policy, quality of life and safe community, I think they're out there, but, and that probably just falls in that overarching, making our community better. I don't know if there's a strategic priority in there. It's more of a statement, I think, right? So many times these masks, when you talk a lot, it's tough to get error. Public outreach, I think the base is a subset of that, if that's okay. I think the priority is public outreach, right? I think it's in public outreach engagement. I think that was kind of the topic that we were having on it, if that's okay to kind of clarify that. See why I don't, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you let Carrie do that?
Maybe make my E a little clearer here.
Yeah, we can.
Just in case I have to write anymore, right?
Yeah, the controls of the TVs, so we put them on Mac and see them.
So public safety, under public safety, off-road enforcement, I think is somewhat clear, pretty clear from a policy perspective. Fire prevention review, I think is pretty clear. This next one, preservation of night sky, clean air. I think the topic there was really night sky, wasn't it?
Yeah, because we were going over the mission statement, that was something we were just talking about.
So it's a night sky policy.
Yeah.
Utah Trail specific plan, revenues, I'll put enhancement, if that's okay. Gary, if you can, please.
Sure.
So I don't have my chicken scratch, I guess. That next item, we didn't have full dialogue, but any council member could do it. We were chatting before we started, and Councilmember Wright mentioned legislative relations. I think, and that could be a strategic priority, and I put that on the board because Mac brought it up, Councilmember Wright brought it up. Those relations with our legislators are very important because, it was very nice, and it is nice currently, but things change. Picking up the phone with Chad Mays, we know him, we can call him, we can ask him. Paul Cook, it was good. We know him, we know his cell phone number, we call him, we ask him. Now, we have Dawn Rousgood, we know her, we can call her, but now we have a new congressman, right? Jay Obernolte, and I think those relationships, and legislators change all the time. So from a strategic priority, does that make sense? Councilmember Wright brought it up, but it made sense to me, so.
You can cross out, I'll have my own.
Okay, cool. Services, I think this is self-explanatory, tear down dilapidated structures, code enforcement.
Do we want to add, possible funding with that?
Well, those will all be the, how do we implement? So, because all of these are going to take money mostly to do. Diversity events, I think, is self-explanatory. Student engagement and partnerships, I think, is explanatory. Veteran services is explanatory. Healthcare district collaboration is explanatory. Is the council okay? I'm kind of pulling it to the side right now, so I can breathe. Events, homelessness, and all those are pretty self-explanatory. Staff training, cross-training, educational, I think is pretty health benefits, community center survey. So all of these were self-explanatory. So, I just wanted to kind of hone down, because as we look to see what the priority was, I just wanted to kind of drill down to these. So to piggyback off of last night, I know we were late night last night. So we heard from David Smith, we heard from Darren Otten, Copper Mountain College, and we heard from Aaron Adams, that's from the base, and the Colonel. Any thoughts, any priorities that came out of there, any clarification, questions, concerns?
Yeah, pretty much like, MacArthur said, the clarification with the verbiage that the Colonel was using regarding the sewer.
Sewer, okay. And we have the sewer system, so, great point, and one of the things, I'll communicate to the council as we're working on the, MOU right now, with the Colonel, and Aaron, and so I'll make sure that is communicated for those fine details. Anything else from last night? The college, the national park, anything that we heard that sounded like potentially could be a strategic priority? The college is a great partner, with economic development. The national park is an economic development catalyst, but I don't know if there was anything specific. So seeing none there, the other thing too is kind of reviewing future agenda items that are kind of hanging out there. Again, because, and we can still talk it in the future agenda items. And what future agenda items are is in between our budgeting, in between our strategic priorities, things come up, right? And that's why you want, as a council, have a future agenda item. But this is the perfect opportunity to make sure to see if it is out there. So medical marijuana, things have evolved. I should probably just say cannabis, because there's many tentacles around that. So is cannabis a strategic priority?
I don't think it's a priority. It's something that eventually will have to be addressed.
So it's not something we need to consider. The other thing too, and maybe it falls under, updating infrastructure, adding features. I know one of the future agenda items was Veterans Park, enhancing that. So I think that probably falls in updating infrastructure, adding existing features. So if that ends up making the top 10 list, if you will, that could be the subsets of implementation. What? The only other thing too is thinking about last night, and it's kind of queued up from a policy perspective, is vacation home rentals. I think I've heard that as a policy priority of the council, but you want to put it on this list because that's ever evolving. And that's a strategic priority of the council?
I'd like to see it on the list.
Okay, it's definitely a evolving animal, because it's almost like who the owners are of the property dictates what type of, rental it is. I mean, some of them are very strict, and some of them just want the rental. We have, public comment, so go ahead, Eli.
Sean Michael said it should be addressed, cannabis, health and safety issue, and revenue income. That was his question.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, and it's, the vacation rental is true. Mr. Mayor, that's a good characterization of it ever evolving. I go back and forth on it just from a manager's perspective. On one hand, it is a great revenue source for the city. It is the new way people travel, just like Uber, right? On the other hand, there is, and we heard from the school district, their census numbers are starting to decrease because, and they pointed to Joshua Tree very specifically. The Joshua Tree market is saturated with vacation home rentals. the Joshua Tree Elementary, I think is in Joshua Tree Elementary. Their numbers are decreasing because I've heard numbers of upward of 800 to 1,000 vacation home rentals. That used to be before homeowners used to live in there that may have children, and now it's not, right? So there's definitely a housing related issue. We had a meeting with like Joshua Tree National Park, the Bays, and you know, we heard, you know, from all of them, housing is, long-term housing is very difficult right now. So, you know, definitely vacation home rentals, but on the other side of it, is housing a priority?
I think those two kind of go hand in hand, because if we have too many vacation home rentals, then we have nothing for our city people to rent or to own. So I think that eventually we'll have to come up with something as far as limitation of how many can be in a certain range, because we will look a lot like Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree is, and it's a good thing, you know, it's full of a bunch of young people with different styles and lifestyles and everything else, but still our people need someplace to live. Citizens need someplace to live, and so if we don't do something now, we will be behind the 8 ball.
And I agree that they're hand in hand, but they're separate too, right? So let's just kind of play it out, and I don't know where the council goes. If that doesn't become a priority, and I'm not saying it doesn't, you still, I mean, we have a housing issue, right? So is housing, and it's tied together, but on a separate pillar, is that important too, housing?
Yeah.
Question.
I think housing should be separate. I think we need to come up with some really good ideas on how to get, contractors to come in and fill in our infill, areas. But yeah, I think we really need to talk about housing.
Right. 2010, a little bit after that, we had an infill program,
Yeah.
and actually was pretty successful.
Very.
We waived the fees and we did some other things, and it was actually pretty successful. They were building. We have another question. Go ahead, Joe.
We have two comments. One, I'll just go, it goes back to cannabis. City Jessica has commented, just an FYI, there are a few people inquiring when we are going to address the cannabis issue. And Sean Michael commented, vacation rentals also directly ties to motorcycles and environmental damage and trash and litter.
That's a good comment. Thank you.
Okay, so
Hey, can we go back to cannabis, because it is, something that is always coming up. And I do notice that we've had some, pop-ups out in the county, with the big cannabis farms and all that. I think we really need to talk about it. It is a moneymaker, but then again, federal government is not, it's not legal in the federal side, legal here in California. So I think we really need to at least sit down and address it and talk about it.
yeah, as one council member puts it up, again, ultimately, at the end of this, we'll see if it's a priority, but. Okay, so, again, just to give the council, and hopefully these things stimulate, just want to talk now about staff priorities, just so you kind of know, outside of strategic planning, what we're working on, which, when you hear some of these things, may turn into a priority that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have thought about. So starting, at least for myself, somewhat kind of ties in this area, and maybe we expand upon that, or maybe it's separate, is, you know, so one of my challenges and thoughts and goals for this year is organizational design, growth opportunities, and compensation. Organizational design, what that means is how do we, you know, we got 4 people in this department, 3 people in this department, 2 in this area, 5 in this area, and what makes the most sense, right? And so that's, you know, something that I'm working on. Organizational design is very important with our changing technology, making things easier, but also to changing, we're getting busier, right? In certain areas, getting busier. So how do we match that with human resources. So that's one thing that, you know, I have as my goal. The compensation schedule is always somewhat of a challenge. And just to, most of you understand, have worked in government. Government is different from private enterprise. And I think there's a hybrid approach there. How do we not have the traditional step and range? So step and range means, you know, you're here a year, you step, meaning getting a raise if you pass your employee evaluation. So if you are a superstar or if you're just doing your job, that step and range is the same for everybody. In the private sector, you know, as many of you know, if you're doing a great job, you may get a bit better raise than somebody who's just doing average, right? So what is a good structure for that? So that's one of the things that I'm working on internally, both of those things, organizational design and compensation. Enhanced oversight. Eli and many of our staff have multiple talents. You know, one of the things that we do currently, and this is the lack of, in the past anyway, lack of time and maybe priority. We do a great job of keeping our books, you know, making sure our monies are accounted for, but do we, in advance or afterwards, analyze the dollars that we spent, the public dollars that we spent? Are they put to the most useful ways? So that's one of the things that Eli and I are going to be working on as far as a goal is to analyze pre and after to make sure that, you know, the dollars were spent were being very responsible. And maybe there's other ways. Project Phoenix, as we talked about, from a manager's perspective, is on our list. We're going to complete this over the next 12 months. We're going to get this on target. We're going to have hopefully resources remaining and, you know, coming back to the council on what we then do with those resources. And we'll hear a little later, and I think it's right here in revenue enhancement. And actually, that was one of the things this morning I put there too. I think the topic was revenues, but it's really revenues enhancement. So I added that word, if that's okay. One of the challenges we're going to have is all these things that we want to do, the reality of it, we're just like our personal budgets, we're like a business. So if there's not resources there, what do? You either, you know, it's one of two things. You either cut your, what you want to do, or cut your expenses, or on the flip side of it, look at revenue augmentation. And that's always the dirty word that's out there, but it just has to be something that we do consider. Moving on, human resources. You know, one of the things with technology we're going to be working on is a system called NeoGov. And because right now we have paper, right? So you send in your application paper, you know, we get it paper, we process it paper, we're going to go all online. So it makes it nice and easy, a checklist of items, processing, so it'll be much easier from a human resource perspective. Animal control, one of that department's priorities, going paperless. We talked about that before. How do we use our technology to make things more streamlined, cost effective? Right now, we send license renewals, you know, when your renewals are up at paper, and as the generations change, let's say, you know, the paperless is the best way to go. I know myself, most of my bills, if not all my bills, I kind of click for paperless, and we just need to move into that arena. Shelter facility rehab, and this kind of ties a little bit to this, animal control staffing. You know, we've talked through the years, one is the animal control building is just an old building. You know, Eli's done a lot of work, he and Craig looking over there. I forget what year, it goes back to the name I always hear, Bobby Mott's, you know, whenever that was time frame, that's when that was put up. It's an old steel building, steel rust and rots, and there's holes in that building, and that's when those little critters get in there. And those little critters have been just eating the heck out of that building, and so it's a problem. So we've got to rehab it, and it costs money. In addition to that, we have, the animal quarantine building. And that animal quarantine building, is best practice, to have your vicious dogs and animals and your sick dogs and animals somewhere else than your, general population, for lack of a better word. But that costs a lot of money too. So, do we kind of look at that operation, scaling that operation? But I heard on the flip side of it, that's something of a strength for the council. They see it from a community. So there's a yin and a yang there, and it's a challenging one. Again, that 24-hour service, and how do we accomplish that? And maybe the only way to accomplish that is throw money at that, but, we're not flush with money, so what do we do? And again, as I'm going through here, if there's any questions, comments, concerns, anything that becomes you think want to talk about as a priority. Community development. So we have 2 Prop 68 grants, for Pioneer Park and for the animal control facility. Both of those, and you'll hear in the finance section coming up soon, both of them are going to cost money to operate, and I think it truly is, and I've had this conversation with some staff members, it's incumbent on us to, and we've heard it from the council, we heard it in the infrastructure side of it, you want more infrastructure, right? It's incumbent on us. Those are one of the basic tenets of what government should be doing, roads, parks, infrastructure. But, and there's only certain times that these monies come around. Prop 84 was the last proposition that provided money for parks. That was 10 years plus ago. Now we got Prop 1, or Prop 68. So now there's probably not going to be another one for another 10 years. So we've got 2 applications out there. As mentioned, Pioneer Park and Knott Sky Park. If successful for one or both, it's going to cost, I think, $50,000-ish to operate those things. So anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but again, just something that's truly out there. Citizen Serve implementation. Last year's technology goal, or 2 years technology goal, we're implementing now. It's going to be through community development. It's going to make the code enforcement, as mentioned earlier, phone calls. It's challenging, right? Especially from a code enforcement side, when you have, lots of calls. Code enforcement is in the field, comes back, paperwork in the field and is back. So how do we automate some of these processes, right? Make them, and that's what we're doing in community development, and even from a planning, business licenses and permitting, make it online so it's easy to process and easy for the customer to know where it's at. And I say customer, resident, to know where it's at in the process. Downtown specific plan underway. We're looking at that. We have got a grant for that, along with some staff or general fund dollars. General plan update, not part of any strategic priority out there, but it is best practice. I think it's every 8 years, I believe, that we need to update so our general plan has several elements in it. And our general plan is is our guidance document of how we develop the city, one of which is housing. And so part and parcel goes with what was discussed earlier, and so that will be updated. SCAG, and I forget who's our SCAG representative. I don't know, Joel, is it you or whoever it was or is? SCAG is Southern California Association of Governments, and part of their process was looking at housing needs, because housing translates into transportation, but transportation is changing, but that's a whole different issue. But one of the things that they've looked at, which is called RHNA now, which is Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and I think it's 1,000 units is what they say, and I forget the horizon over maybe 15 years. They're saying those are the housing units that we need based on growth projections and housing needs, so like 1,000 units. So we're updating our general plan, which again, housing element, which kind of plays into all that. GIS, Geographical Information Systems. It's a new way, again, back to technology again. People want visualization. So you visualize, you see a map, you see in there many things, owner information, property information, planning documents, many different layers. And we're moving into more training, with that. Affordable housing, again, kind of part and parcel with that. As the council's aware, even as a subset of Project Phoenix, we have a low mod housing, responsibility. And we're looking and planning with that, senior designated, as the council has said. And, you know, we're working through that process, hopefully awarding a contractor in this first part of the year. Accounting and finance, you know, we're, you know, with a workforce, you always have changes. You have retirements. You have people looking for other jobs. It's a natural process. In accounting, we'll be transitioning this current year with a retirement. In the city clerk department, again, back to transition, or not transition, but technology. The city clerk department, you know, if you go back into Cindy's office, well, the clerk's office right next to it is her storage area, paper galore. And that is two things of that. We're in a digital technology age, right? Digital storage, and also, you know, some documents are just not needed anymore, right? So we're going to get overrun by paper if we don't address some kind of a retention that is approved by the council and our city attorney, but that's coming this year. And notaries. So, you know, we have many different needs for notary services in the city, and we're just going to be adding another person to that so we ensure we have consistency. TBIT, they're going to continue to promote and promote safe and responsible travel. You know, kind of maybe somewhat goes that towards responsible travel, and I think Brianne's listening. You know, those people may be coming to our community that wants to bring their ATVs and ride in the desert. Maybe that's part of what the outreach, you know, as far as the TBIT does, and I know Brianne's listening. Maybe that's part of that safe and responsible travel that, you know, they promote, which is part of their responsibilities and their goals. They want to develop and execute an effective marketing campaign based on some pillars, and some of these pillars kind of match, and it was interesting going through this. Outdoor recreation. That's not completely ATV, but it's hiking. It's you know going out to the new preserves that we have, just recreating in our beautiful outdoor environment. Arts, culture, and history. You know, we heard from David Smith yesterday about the Native American culture. You know, that visitor center will be a catalyst to talk about that travel and that culture that is out there. But that's one of the things that they're working, health and wellness. You know, you come and you travel to 29 Palms, you stay at our hotels or you stay at our vacation home rentals. You go in the backyard at the night, you look at those night skies, which we talked about as a priority, and you get out of the rat race. And, you know, that all in itself is why some people come out here to travel, right? Just that health and wellness. Culinary is another one of their priorities from the TBID. Again, kind of matches, you know, I don't know if we have education there somewhere, but it's actually Project Phoenix. You know, how do we, you know, and maybe even matching up the economic development too. How do we develop that culinary experience? We all, or at least I do, you know, watch the Food Network. You know, just watching it last night as I was falling asleep after this, was it the Master Chefs? You know, food is a big deal. So as we develop ourselves into this destination, we need culinary. You know, you can't just have, and we have some, right? I mean, there's no doubt what we have is good. The question then becomes, do we need more? And how do we prime that pump? Because you can't just have a place to stay in a national park. You got to have that full experience. And they've identified that as a priority. And astronomy. Here's something we really, you know, kind of ducktails something that, again, this is a means of stimulating conversation, and maybe it's a priority. Sky's the limit. I know I've talked to, you know, Jerry and Ann, you know, through the years on it, and I know they've talked to Carrie a lot. Is that a strategic priority of the council? It's a strategic priority of the TBID. Is it of the council too? And how do we? I think and I would be very gentle in this, and I think they would probably concur, and hopefully, if they don't, I apologize. But I think the Sky's the Limit is looking for some strategic partners, right? We've kind of tried to talk to, Romney Unified, Copper Mountain College. I know they've talked to Carrie and Recreations and Christina, but, that's volunteer based, and if it's a
Well, I thought
priority.
that's what, part of what, Christina was, her being an event coordinator, and then she actually moved over to, Park and Rec, but I thought that was part of what she was, how this kind of started with her.
So promoting events, yes, absolutely. So what, and their big event that we help on, which they needed a lot of help on, was, their annual, the annual Night Sky Festival, a lot of planning there, right? So they have, I don't know, what was before COVID anyway,
500, something like that.
it was a big deal. So we help them in the promotion but what they struggle more to also, in addition to the events, is just the day-to-day. They have monthly night sky, I think, what do they call the monthly, it's, the sky party?
Sky viewing parties.
The sky viewing parties. They are doing outreach to astronomy clubs. They're tying it into educational opportunities. So there's a lot of events. It's almost a full-time person just for Sky's the Limit, and it's a growth opportunity. We're helping, that's an augmentation of what Christina is doing, but it's just not enough. It's just really not enough. So we're trying to tie them in a little bit. I know Darren, the college, is trying to tie them in, again, operationally with their astronomy department, if you will, and so they could maybe program, maybe there's astronomy clubs and other educational opportunities that could kind of tie in. I think Sky's the Limit is looking for that full-time strategic partner. It's a volunteer organization, and maybe they're getting so successful that they're outgrowing that volunteer organization. So I don't know if that's something that you want to talk about as a strategic priority and just offer that. Moving on, with TBID, they're building and strengthening strategic partners. They get that partner program. With the struggling, I guess, of the Chamber of Commerce, they're coming up with this partnership program that can add, right now it's just hoteliers and vacation rentals, but adding regular businesses to the mix. So they're, rolling out that program. Sustainability for the industry, and sustainability doesn't mean money coming in that you can pay your bills in a sustainable process, but the environmental sustainability side of it. So that's part of their goals. And as mentioned earlier, expansion options for the TBID. Wonder Valley, I think, is the natural one. There's a lot of vacation home rentals there, and they really consume here, right? Different from Joshua Tree. I think, promoting Joshua Tree would be a little challenging, as we heard from, the council in the past, the city of Joshua Tree, meaning not the Joshua Tree National Park, because they'll just consume there, and we want them to consume in our city from an economic development perspective. But if you're in Wonder Valley, you're consuming here, right? I mean, it's just natural. So maybe that's an opportunity. Recreations kind of falls in line with some of this updating infrastructure. Carrie's got many projects, within Lucky Park of repairs, and here's a big one, pool rehabilitation. So the pool is, I don't know, Carrie, how old is that pool?
Oh, gosh, it was put there in the 50s, I think, early 50s.
Yeah, So, and I think I was talking to somebody about it. There's a pool inside of a pool, so they probably had an issue years ago, and instead of excavating the old pool, they just put another pool on top of the pool.
They just made it smaller.
So it's old and it's not cheap, we're gonna be going down the process of CDBG after Project Phoenix is done, and that's gonna be the next big project, but $500,000, $300,000?
Yeah, because the pipes currently they're grandfathered in, but the actual plumbing doesn't meet the current requirements for safety, for water turnover, for chlorine concentration, so it has to be replumbed as well, from the pump house all the way to the pool.
So does that fall under Project Phoenix, or do we need to put that on there? 'Cause
That's separate, yeah,
I think it's a priority.
Well, there's a lot of, programs up, I mean, obviously, I'll just use an example, Got Valley got a brand new track because they used the association, track field association money or whatever.
It was Olympics, LA 84.
So, I mean, I think that's, you know, obviously staff has a lot to do, but if we could pursue something like that, at least get a 50% grant, then yes, that should be a priority because obviously living in the desert, it might not get used every day, but it was bigger. When we went down to Fontana, it was raining, it was pouring down rain on us. We were looking at animal parks and other structures, but their pool house was as big as this room. And there was probably a dozen people doing lap swimming in their lap pool. That wasn't the main pool they had. They had a lap pool, they had the main pool and splash pad and a kiddie pool. But the infrastructure for that building was the size of this, and they had, there were, two guys that have been working just on that. So there is an opportunity for us to make that a premier place. Eli, there was a question for somebody.
There's some comments, from Sean Michael, I'm just gonna read them together. These are kind of bullet points he's thrown out for ideas. And so he had an animal control idea, it says community involvement. And then tie in helping seniors keep active with a campaign to fix, by work or money. The same with neighborhood websites. So those are some of his comments, and I just wanted to get them read into the record.
Okay. Thank you, Sean.
So and that comment ties a little bit into where's involvement, engagement, partnership. So school and student, I'd almost say, just general population engagement partnerships. And it sticks out in my mind. When we built the dog park, right? If we all remember this room was packed with people, if you recall, right? Those who were on the council at that time, and we're going to volunteer, we're going to be there for you, and we struggle for volunteers. We do, and how do we, to that comment, is there a way to engage the public where we could? It's got to be a partnership. I mean, we're going to hear, we just can't do everything, unfortunately, and we need that partnership, but it's fallen flat in some areas. I just offer that. I don't know if that becomes, I think that maybe we expand this here to more than school and student, but to general public.
Go ahead.
Sean Michael again, lots of people want to help, especially with COVID. Pool necessary and COVID concerns. Pool is a priority.
Thank you.
Moving on in recreations, back to Project Phoenix, and Carrie's got lots of things that she's going to be working on over the year. One of which, and it'll be in front of the council soon, is what do we call it? What is that name of that facility? And I think that'll be coming to a council meeting very shortly. The grand opening, that big event that we talked about, and maybe that becomes an annual event. It's going to be a big event for the grand opening, but it's in March. It's a good time of the year. Maybe that's an annual event. The calendar of events and programs. What sports events, what community service events, what events just in general as a conference area. I think we've heard that. So there's a lot of different programming. Staffing. We got to have at least one person there. We got to clean the place. So that's going to be something. And scheduling of use of facilities. So, what we've always said is the general public gets the, opportunity to use recreations, can fill it up probably 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, but it's a community center. So we need to make that also available for those other events. So some of the things that Carrie has had on her plate, bring back, post-COVID. Maybe not a priority, strategic priority, but it's definitely, probably that department, recreations department, probably the biggest department that was hit, right? I mean, everything that they do normally is not happened over the past 12 months. They went virtually in most cases, but so how and when do we gear things back up? And that's one of the things Carrie's going to be working on. Low income program. I think she has the recreation, Bridging the Gap, is what it's called, right? So that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, but if a youth And I think it would be just youth, if they can't afford our fees, you know, this bridging in our, I'll make it up if our fees are $100 and all they can afford is $50, how do you bridge that gap? Is that?
That's correct,
So expanding that and trying to give more opportunities for people to be able to participate. You know, engaging youth, volunteer programs, again, time. And I almost, if it's okay to the council, maybe expand this engagement partnership to more than just youth. You know, we could just school, student, and adults, really. I mean, it's, you know.
We do still want to hear from the seniors and the adults,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Adults, you want to put seniors in there separately than adults, or just adults as catch-all, or?
I think seniors should be separate.
Okay.
Eli, you got some comments?
Sean Michael again, community center like senior center, hub for city volunteers and nonprofits together. Volunteers can take care of their, in quotes, community center, join with senior center and Parks and Rec. I will help, not just comment together.
Well, thank you, Sean.
And then, you know, and carry action to the mayor's comment, finding free money, you know, so that's inherent into all of our departments. How do we, you know, so these will be the priorities, right? And the question then from the staff is, how do we pay for all this stuff, right? And some will be self-funded, some will be looking for that quote-unquote free money.
Well, nothing's free, but like I say, it's, you know, even if we can find a 50%, grant out there or some kind of matching funds that would, because, yeah, if we're gonna do it, we need to do it right this time. We need to, even if it's closed for a year, it needs to be done correctly. Because obviously Eli has some concerns about the piping and the, so.
And that's a good point, just to, and we, just like a business and a family household in a business, sometimes, we don't have the money and we take shortcuts to get things done. And that's a very important point of doing it right. You know, having an all-inclusive solution as opposed to duct tape and Bailey wire, because that ends up just creating bigger issues that, I see both of them nodding their heads. But, you know, a lot of times, you know, just a necessity, you know, we have to get the Bailey wire duct tape in some situations. But, you know, that's a very good point, because that's what we kind of deal with sometimes. Public Works, and Parks, you know, restoring manpower, you know, so with retirements, you know, last year, both in recreations and in Public Works, restoring that manpower, that is projected to start in July. And even with Parks, depending on if we're successful in those grants, you know, we're gonna have to add Parks, you know, you got, and we didn't even talk about Project Phoenix, you know, as far as maintenance, but we got Project Phoenix and the 2 parks, so it's gonna necessitate, you know, more manpower to be able to take care of that. Specialized training, in Public Works, we got wastewater coming up. Right now with Project Phoenix and even overall, there's a different certification. As Carrie mentioned, her husband Mike is, you know, I think it's like distribution 5 or is like a D5, you know, that's, in their world, that's what they work under. You got, you know, distribution 1 through 5, you got treatment, I think 1 through 5. You know, maybe some of our staff can, you know, back to training, right? You know, trying to get our, Public Works folks to be able to get trained not only in wastewater, because that's coming for us, and we can be ready in that, but also backflow prevention. You know, so, and we contract this out, so any system, not any system, but, you know, like a pool, and the pool is most obvious, and there's other areas, you don't want the water to backflow into the system. You know, that's one of the areas from a, you know, after 9/11, that became a real big issue, because you could fill a pool with a bunch of bad chemicals and backflow it into the system and kill a lot of people, right, in theory. And so those backflow prevention devices are very important. And, you know, maybe getting some of our staff trained in that to get certified. Playground inspection. All of our equipment has to be safe. And right now, it doesn't make sense, but through necessity, Eli actually took the class, and he is the resident inspector, but really needs to be in the parks department, right? Then finally, automotive. Automotive is, as opposed to sending it out, maybe brakes, maybe we could do it ourselves, but we need to be certified because we need to be able to do it right. So there's a lot of training, maintaining our fleet, with wastewater, getting some of the equipment. Right now, we're gonna be contracting manpower, because you're touching pipe, you need the certification, but also equipment. Now we're gonna have sewer pipes. Sewer pipes get clogged, right? Sewer pipes sometimes don't flow, right? When they get clogged or they don't flow, what ends up happening? Smell, right? So you gotta maintain these, you gotta blow them, you gotta suck them, you gotta make sure they're clear, or you're gonna create smell. We're gonna contract that all out, both manpower and equipment. At some point in time, we're gonna need that equipment, versus contracting it out. Moving on, solid waste. Eli's gonna have a big thing coming up, which is not gonna be, pleasant for the council and the community outside of the city's, goals and objectives. It's the state of California's goals and objectives. Is it AB 1383?
SB 1383. And they announced last week they do not consider COVID a reason to delay implementation, and they reiterated over and over. So by January of next year, we have to have an ordinance and a new franchise agreement requiring of all to do the organic diversion, or we will face fines of up to $10,000 a day per occurrence. Until we do this.
So where this, comes from, and Max just chimed in because, through, he's the JPA representative, right? Mojave JPA. And where this comes from is from an environmental side, greenhouse gases, right? So all these organic, so biodegradable, and I'm just gonna, put it on the most basic terms, but all this biodegradable stuff goes to the landfill, right? And then methane gases get created, which goes into the atmosphere and creates a global warming situation. So how do you divert that from the landfill, that biodegradable stuff, to somewhere else to process it? And the end product is you capture maybe that methane gas or go to pig farms and other things.
Anaerobic digestion. So the current one, I'll be attending a webinar next week from Energia out of Redlands. They have a facility that processes it, makes fuel for the trucks that haul the product, and goes back into the marketplace. And you end up with all of your bins in a single processing facility. So but the cost is where the trick is, that big hauling from here to there.
Is that the closest one?
That is the closest current facility. There's it's near West Valley, the facility there. That's the closest one currently.
And what does that mean? That means higher rates for our residents and our businesses, because you gotta move it. You gotta collect it and you gotta move it. And so that's gonna cost money. That's gonna cost money.
And I should point out that our franchise hauler Vertec, has spent a tremendous amount of money developing a new transfer station in Yucca Valley, which has been held up with permits from Joshua Trees, the tortoises, everything else, as well as Needham Hill. They built a new facility to process organics that they're trying to get online, but the permitting process is taking them years. So they've invested millions of dollars in this. It's just, right now, currently, if we have to implement this because those facilities aren't open, the closest place to even process with Windrose is Coachella. So that's the closest place. So we still have that 200-mile round trip.
And so you sometimes see this when you go to other communities. You'll see, right now we have 2 bins in our front yard, right? A gray bin for our recyclables and a maroon bin for our trash. I don't know, I think they're even talking about changing the color scheme.
Colors have been changed so that the waste, the green bin, the blue bin will become recycling. So that alone is gonna cost $2 million to change out all of our bins.
And again, that's all get passed down to the customer. Outside of what you as a policymaker body decide, so just wanted to make sure the council and those who are watching it, it's coming.
Yep.
The other thing, we talked about analyzing effectiveness and spending and emergency preparedness, right? I mean, we, as going through COVID, which many folks, especially as a small agency, right? I mean, you know, the hats that we all wear, you know, are homeless hats, a recreational hat, IT hat, solid waste hat, and the list goes on from all of our staff members, you know. We need to be prepared for disasters as what happened this past year with COVID, and that is part of what we need to do each and every day, be prepared for that. Earthquake is probably the most obvious, but who would have thought a pandemic, would have happened, and it did. And boy, the first month it was a fire drill, to say the least, people working from home, how that, so that is something that, we're better off than we were, but nonetheless, we need to continue to prepare for it. So I don't know if anything that you heard there rises to the level of strategic priority or not, but just wanted to kind of offer that. Again, all this is stimulation, conversation, and knowledge.
So I do have one question. We have animal control staffing on there. Does that include buildings?
Yeah, and maybe strike the staffing again, kind of at all. It's or maybe add staffing in facility.
Is Theater 29 on there somewhere?
If not, would you like to add that?
I would.
Services?
Yeah, I mean, again, the buckets are just for this organization, but it's no magic to it. Like you could probably think about quality of life, economic development, infrastructure.
Does the grant money for Pioneer Park include money for Theater 29?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they'll go from, if successful, 90 seats to 150 seats, I think it is, something like that. Anything else that's been stimulated through
I
these?
just think you can probably take that off of there because that would be in with the grant. Would it not?
It would be, but I guess the question then would be, I mean, you could have it still on there, because if we're not successful in the grants, is it still a priority?
Yeah.
Anything else as we move on? All right, so the next thing is the money side of it, and I know, I would sometimes become that Debbie Downer, right? And I apologize about that, because part of my DNA is in the finance side. So within there, you'll have that, in your packet, the 5-year forecast. And
Comment from Sean Michael. Do we have grant writers, or would I have to write or find grant writers?
so the city does have a stable of grant writers that cost money. We don't have internal grant writers, but we have a stable of folks, professionals, grant writers we pay. So in there, it's that, you'll see, looks yellow, you have the yellow in the middle there and stuff. So I'm just gonna summarize this real quick, and, Eli's got a slide that I want to show. So one of the things, what I look at is trying to forecast over 5 years. What I know, basically, over the next 5 years, not a budget, just a forecast. And that basically just simple percentages on revenue, simple percentages on expenses, things that I know, like as we mentioned earlier, Project Phoenix coming on, so those new things that we know are coming on. And what it's telling me is that we're going through this process that, and part of it is a natural process, right? We have retirements that are out there, so, that changes the cost structure a bit, that helps this process. You can't plan on it, but it's just a natural thing that does happen. So I think over this next 2-year process, budget process, I think we're going to be okay. Again, we got to go through it depending on what your priorities are. And then the wild card is still COVID. This new budget will start July 1st. I'm going to assume that we're back to normal by July 1st as we go through this budget process. I'm going to assume that although we'll have retraction in the economy, it will be somewhat stabilized and moving forward as opposed to continuing to retract and go backwards. So that's what I'm looking at. I think over the next 2 years, I think we're okay. But Eli, if you could put up that next slide.
Just gonna move your screen over.
And it may be a little eye test there. Probably put too much on that screen. My father-in-law is a retired optometrist. This is the slide.
Maximize the window.
Yeah, maximize the window.
This is a slide when you go to the doctor's office. Is A better than B? Is B better than C? And that's, oops.
No, the other,
The background window.
yeah.
I can't get rid of this.
You can drag that top bar, yeah, just drag that.
Can't make that any bigger.
No, the top bar, little three ones.
Little green one. Okay.
Oh. Thank you. I think there's a little bit below that too. How do I, yeah, there you go. Take a little bit more. And I know it's gonna be an eye test, but I'll just walk through this. So just again, so the council's aware, public, so just the top part there is our savings, right? You know, so what are we talking about in savings? We do have in the bank, almost $6.9 million. So we're, you know, for a small agency with a budget of, you know, around $10 million, it's a lot of money that we have in the bank. So that's a good thing, okay? You know, within that money, we've already put aside $1.3 million for the water district's firefighter pension. So we kind of put some money aside. We had a little footnote there, you know, and we also, over and above what we've put aside, we received money from the water district, and this was the reserves that they had for fire, along with the city bought, you know, the fire station, which went in there, and other things that have gone there. So in aside, we have another 1.8 million. So in total, we have 3.1 million kind of put to the side to defease the firefighter pension. We're not there yet. The economy just, you know, I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but there's a certain matrix that the economy still needs to be at, because pensions are based on U.S. Treasury bonds, and the U.S. Treasury bonds, if you watch it, I don't even know where it's at today. I don't follow it every day, but it's below 2%. It's really low right now, U.S. Treasury bonds, and we need the Treasury bonds to get up to the 3-4% range. So we got about 3.1 million just already set to the side for the firefighter pension. So net, you know, we have about almost $5.6 million of available resources. I mean, those are undesignated, unrestricted resources. I don't say that to mean go spend them, but you do have resources there, and we need to be conservative because things happen, but also those are resources that are there. So, you know, working our way down, and this plays into that matrix, just so you understand. Just organic growth, once, you know, outside of the slide, if you will, once we stabilize, just looking at property tax, looking at sales tax, looking at TOT tax, we know all those things will just naturally increase, right? Things will cost more money, our houses will cost more money, more property tax, more sales tax, room rates may go up, more, you know, so organic growth is about $350,000 a year, so that's decent, right? But then when you look at what we know increases, sheriff's contract it's currently $4.3 million, and you know that annual increase is going to be about 7%. So that's $300,000 all in itself. So once you start with that 350 organic growth, a majority of that is taken by just the sheriff's contract increase. We heard, you know, sheriff's in the SWOT analysis, sheriff's the contract is a strength, but it's costly, and it just you know, there's the yin and the yang there. It is costly. Just normal city payroll, 2.6 million, just a 4% increase, and 4% meaning COLA and really steps and other payroll related costs. is about another $100,000. Wastewater, we talked about before, Project Phoenix. You know, it's a small system. Excuse me, we're gonna have to subsidize some of those rates. Where did that come from? General fund, that's about $50,000. The net Project Phoenix operations, so we're gonna have rentals, and I was thinking about it this morning, and that's why a lot of these things are estimates until you get into the operation. I don't know if that's gonna be a net zero for the city. Is it gonna just, some of those rentals just gonna come from Patriotic Hall and Community Services Building and just go over to the community center, not no increases, just transfers? Thinking about that this morning, and that's one of the things we'll have to watch and see, but anyway, we've got a net in there of about $100,000, you know, so revenue less expenses. You know, our new parks, and this is only one park, you know, so if we're fortunate enough to have 2 new parks, that doubles, but about $50,000 of operating costs, because you got power, you got water, you got manpower, you got to cut grasses, you gotta do things, you know, splash pad and knapsack park, we're gonna have chemicals. There's gonna be lots of things, right? And I don't say this to, I mean, this is part of the planning process, right? So what can happen, you know, outside of all this, and I truly think we're on the cusp of something. So not only I'm talking about is organic growth, is conservative natural growth. But when we're successful in Project Phoenix, when we're successful in all these other things that we talk about, hopefully that revenue grows a lot more than those expenses are. And there'll be, you know, staff transitioning, retirements and all that. So there's a lot of things that play into this. But I just wanted to kind of give you a little snapshot of, you know, when I started this job, I think I had all black hair, right? So I don't have it anymore. Eli had a full set of hair and he pulled it out, right? You know, from a planning perspective, this is what we should do, right? We won't be caught off guard, and just want to form you in the community. You know, we're a business, which some of this kind of ties back to then revenue enhancement, right? That's I tell you, it's tough to talk through this thing. That's a grim reality of things, right? You know, do we want to have all those things that we want to have or not? That's a choice, right? But if we do want those things, how do we augment that with our current revenue stream? It's a tough one, and it's a tough one. So, okay. I'm always a Debbie Downer, aren't I?
When it comes to finance, it's not a matter of being a Debbie Downer. You know, we're adults and we understand that things do cost, and that's just the bottom line. Things cost,
Yeah.
inflation happens.
Can't ignore it. You just can't ignore it.
You're the money man.
Yes. So moving right along, okay, and again, I told you we would power through this. We're at 9:30. So what else, you know, what else have we missed here? Is there anything? I mean, again, all this conversation was to stimulate thoughts, you know, scan your minds, you know, of people that have complained about things maybe. You know, I see something that just popped into my mind, you know, maybe as I'm talking, maybe something pops into your mind. I think Joel got reached out about this. So Adobe Road, so we did the undergrounding in Project Phoenix, right? And you get these big old power poles, and those big old power poles cost some money to, you know, to move in the underground and all of that. And, you know, I think it was $1.6 million. So you're looking at, where do we start at? We started at Tamarisk and we went to Cholla. So 4 blocks, 4 small blocks. You know, I don't know how many poles, I can't remember. But $1.6 million bucks. That's a lot of money. So Adobe Road, we're going to have some of a similar issue on Adobe Road as well, you know, from after 2 Mile Hill, or 2 Mile Road. You know, so the upper portion, I guess the southern portion of Adobe Road from 2 Mile to State Route 62 has been improved. It's okay. But now you go down the hill and the poles, next time you go down that hill, go look, the poles are right there on the road, pretty close to it. So as you develop, you know, new stuff down there, The problem is those poles are in the way, right? So, and it's costly to move those poles. So, so the question comes up is, well, developers come back and say, what? I can't build down there. The cost of that, moving those poles is too expensive. And this is not an undergrounding issue. So we as a city have an undergrounding policy, right? So we want to, get rid of all those unsightly, lines that are through the city, right? Ideally. But this is more than that. It's actually moving the poles, right? So to be able to get a safe turn radius, so people go fast down Adobe Road, right? Outside of the speed limit and within the speed limit, they go fast, right? So if you're a business and you're going down there and you want to turn right, let's say if you're going north, you want to have a safe pocket to turn, right? You don't want the guy behind you, gal behind you that ran you. You want to have a safe pocket to turn. So you got to move the pole, and that's costly. So anyway, just to throw that out too, because I know that's an issue that's out there, and that's not a cheap issue. That's not a cheap issue. Anyway, we wanted to throw that out as a discussion point. Anything else that the council has heard people complain about, maybe a priority, things you want to do or see?
I have a question. Do we have like a janitorial staff?
We don't, so we contract that out. And one of the things that we're doing back to fiscal analysis, we're going to be looking at that because scratching our heads, does it make sense to bring on a staff person that is flexible, that maybe when we need them to do other things, it's good to have that manpower, but their primary goal and job is janitorial.
I think so. In light of COVID, you're going to have certain guidelines when it comes to sanitation, cleaning of buildings, restrooms, and things of that nature. That who's going to do it?
Do you think that rises to the level of a strategic priority, janitorial?
I do. In order for us to open and open safely, yes.
And just pick us, yeah, sure. Because good point, going back to the new normal is, I know now Carrie and her staff are going out to the facilities and, going in extra precaution of spraying things down and making sure the germs are all off of them. But post-COVID, when Carrie is at full recreational staff and programs, I don't know if she's gonna have an opportunity to go around and spray everything. So that may be part of the new normal. Or is the other side of it, just being cynical, are we just gonna go back? And when I say we, I mean we as Americans, gonna go back to the way we used to do things. Not that we're dirty, but just do things the way we did always before as Americans. So that could be something that's part of the new normal. Anything else?
I think that would be more than one janitor, because there's a lot of buildings here that we cleaned and.
Probably will be.
And if it's just, we do, have a janitorial service that comes in every day.
Yeah.
So you did say you guys are doing an analysis on this?
Well, it's part of, again, that analysis, instead of spending money, now, and not that we willy-nilly just spend money, but now there's gonna be a thoughtful analysis on things. Okay, let's really weigh these things, let's analyze this, but do more than bookkeeping. Let's just try to figure out what's the best pathway.
So I'm currently working on the animal control analysis, and a couple weeks into that, so I'll have something on that, and I'll move on to this, starting tasking, this is my next task.
I totally agree with you, though, that it needs to be done, it will have to be done. But is one person going to be enough to do all these buildings every day that need to be?
And there's gonna be a lot to that, like the city hall as an example, we don't do it every day, we actually do it 3 days a week, right? I think Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, right? So now you translate that to all of our other places, so do you need to do it every day? I mean, a germ can come in any second, so it's an error. How safe can we be, or how safe should we be, I guess is the question, as far as sanitation.
I mean, so if it's feasible, if it's within our doing, I think we should do it, because we're gonna invite the public back into the chamber. And so we don't know where their hands have been, or their assets, and, you know, we don't need to put others at a risk when we can prevent it.
You know, one thing talking about, and we're having this conversation, we're talking about the kitchen. Because that kitchen is there's a whole level of cleaning in the kitchen, and the school district actually is gonna take the lead on it, because that's what they do. They have janitorial staff. So when we need it, we'll pay them, but for the most part, they'll clean that kitchen, Project Phoenix. So. Anything else before we move on? And if you think of anything as we go through, please add it. So, again, as they said, we're gonna be powering through this. So, let's see what we've got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So there's 30 things that you will consider is the top, right? Where's the little, fun part of this? Maybe it's still in my office. I'll write it out right in front of my face. So, we're gonna have to figure out how to do Steve, Steve, you're on your phone, maybe I could do FaceTime actually, with you on this. What I'll do is give each council member, 10 stickers, and, you got 30 items there, and try to figure out what is your, biggest issue that's out there, of 10 stickers. After that, we'll kind of narrow down to, again, I think proverbial top 10. It could be, actually, I should probably give you 15 stickers, because again, the proverbial top 10, they're gonna be more than 10 that you have. So I'll give you 15 stickers. We'll try to see, what consensus there are of top items. Obviously, I think, 3 stickers on something means it's a priority, 2 or less, it's just for an individual. But anybody have any preference of a color?
I always get green.
You always get green? Ooh, he's got the Wildcat green. Anybody else have a preference?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We got purple, we gotta start.
So here's 12.
You said red, Carmela?
Yeah, and 15, please.
Purple, Danny?
If you got purple, yeah, I'll take it.
I'll take any color.
It really doesn't matter, but I was, Mac requested, I had a
Red,
request.
you just wanna grab out 15.
So I get all of these?
It should be 15, right? Yeah. Oh, no, that's more than 15. Yeah, I gave
Oh,
you-
Mac gets to pick more.
Actually, there should be 12 on, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, and 3, yeah. Oh, I can't count.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just to bring something up, which is a good point,
Yeah, Joe should get dolphin orange.
so this staff training is compensation something, is from a priority that the staff wants to, the council wants to look at? They talked about cross-training, but again, from a manager's perspective, there's that whole compensation model, one of which is longevity. What longevity is, so you have that step I mentioned, right? So you got, I think in our current system, you have 13 steps. And so let's say you're here for the city for 20 years, okay? So once you hit that 13th step, in 13 years, now for the next 7 years, you don't get a step anymore. What is traditional that's out there, some cities do it, some cities don't, but it is traditional, is longevity. So you get an extra amount, let's say. It's not part of your step and range, it's an extra amount for longevity, meaning maybe every 5 years after you've been here, after the 13th year, you get rewarded, if you will, for Lent. That compensation side of it is, from a manager's perspective, something that I'll be working on. Does it rise to the level of something that you want as a priority as far as compensation review?
I thought we was already doing that.
You know, so council authorized money last year for that. Prior to COVID, we stopped it in the midst of COVID. And the reason we stopped it in the midst of COVID was, organizations were doing a lot of weird things, in preparation for COVID, you know, a lot of freezing, layoffs, you name it. So the pay structures that were out there were getting changed. I'm hoping this year, you know, as agencies get back to normal, that structure will then be stabilized and we can analyze it. So it is something that the staff has as a priority, but does it rise to the level of a council priority? So it's all up to you guys. So Steve, maybe we'll do FaceTime for Steve. What do we have left? He's got what, yellow?
He's yellow.
Yeah, he's definitely yellow.
Yeah, he got Green Bay yellow.
Yeah.
It's not Green Bay yellow.
Are you still there, Steve? Sleeping?
I'm still here.
Okay, so Steve,
If you can take a picture, send it to me, you know, afterward.
well, okay, I could do that too, I think, or I could do FaceTime, then you could just see it as I go walk through. So we're at the point now where, you know, council is saying what's most important to them.
Yeah.
So I got, 15 stickers for you to kind of stick on things. So do you want me to do FaceTime, or do you want me to just take pictures of it?
Yeah, we can FaceTime here.
FaceTime, okay. Where do we switch on to our network here? Oh, it's already on our network. Why are they going to FaceTime? It's not accepting the FaceTime, I'm not sure why.
Can you video call? Try video call from here?
Let me hang up and try to call you that way, because I was trying to like switch it to FaceTime, and it wasn't
do it.
call.
What do you do? Can I video call you? Let me see.
Yeah, you wanna just try to, I'll hang up and just try to call me back and video
I
call?
hand the phone to my kids. You help me with this.
Yeah.
Steve?
Not ready? No.
No, yeah, it was weird, it was, so it didn't come over on FaceTime for you either?
Not for video call. Let me go. Let me try.
Preservation of midnight sky.
FaceTime.
If you look at nighttime.
I'll call you back.
Okay,
Steve don't have an iPhone?
oh, maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why,
Probably
so
Google
you,
Duo.
oh, so you can't do FaceTime with?
No.
Yeah, that's what Steve,
Light coming over from the mountain.
Cindy just sent me a text, yeah, he doesn't,
The light
use
coming
Facebook
from
video, okay.
that place down there.
Thank you, Cindy.
So really, we have.
Right? You have Duo?
I don't, but, I think, the FaceTime video.
That just came up when we were talking about our mission statement, stuff like that. That was kind of what kind of got a little bit mixed up. Our priorities.
I was trying to FaceTime Steve, but he doesn't have a phone. Oh, he's doing it right now, yeah. Steve? Okay, let me turn mine. Oh, there we go. Okay, let me turn this around here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I got, 15. Oh, great, thanks. So you got 15, can you read that? Okay, that's infrastructure. Do you want me to go through them all first, or like one at a time, or what would you? Steve, can you see that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you see it?
I see it, yes.
Okay, so do you want me to go through one at a time, or do you want to kind of scan through them so you see them all, or how would you?
That's funny, I would recognize diversity adding grants, we kind of,
Infrastructure,
you were very diverse there.
Yes, yes, we were.
I just want to say, everywhere else they did it in line.
And you have,
Funny how we did that.
well, let me run through them real quick. So there's the infrastructure.
It's, I guess,
Then you got economic development. Then you got, then you got quality of life, items. Okay.
What's fire prevention?
Then you got, public
For
safety.
businesses, they come in and they charge us for,
Like if you want your, if you got a new business and you need to.
You got 15. Then you got policy.
Inspected, then you have to pay the fee.
I pay $300 besides the $150.
Then you got,
I pay about
services.
about $1,500 to, properties, that $1,500, they have 10 pieces of property.
You
And
got,
then I pay
human resources.
For them to come and inspect my building. So that's kind of, I do.
Then you got technology. So I'll go back to the beginning, so that, now you're at the beginning of infrastructure.
I've been working on the spot, so hopefully some basic. That's not ready yet.
Facilities, updating infrastructure facilities, one.
Okay.
Then,
Anything else on this? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna see.
That looks like a winner.
I don't know.
Anything else on here you want to move?
more work for Haley.
The one in.
Economic development?
Here, it's right the old.
Yeah, I
Apple,
know.
right next to the map.
Yeah, I know where it is,
That looks like a winner.
but I'm thinking hoses run that.
Anything? Okay. Quality of life?
I know they, whenever they send me the x-rays or whatever they wanna do, they want me to do it for one of the internal doctors.
Well, we cross those out, so, because those were really,
So,
yeah.
that's why I didn't put it down, because I'll find out. If it's something that's feasible.
Okay. Anything else there, or you want to move on?
Move on.
Okay. Policy?
Housing, well, like, the housing, okay, vacation home and housing.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one.
Move on, or are you good? Okay. Oops, sorry.
No problem.
Tear down development, the foundation,
There's only three up there. Not that it's four.
veteran services.
Oh, that's right, there's five now. We wouldn't count. It's just been so used to four of us. See, some of this stuff is gonna be like the.
Diversity and events?
End up being like.
Oh, out of it, okay, yeah.
Slide over.
Okay.
5 left.
You got 5 left.
Yes, the staff training. Slide over, please.
This is a lonely one over here.
Three of them have done, staff training college on top.
There you go. Back, one. Health benefit, review.
3 left.
Back one.
Yeah, it's at all, yeah.
Okay, that's fine, everyone?
Oh, yeah, so, you know, the front of the bullets, how the building controls. So, I had a metal building and a brick building, so what I did was, we put a wafer board and all metal, and then we stuck it to make it all the same, the front part, not the back part, it's left, because there's no, but that's how I ended up doing it. If it's not a rust, you just put, you want to keep building, it's like a wafer board, screwed to the metal, where it's rusted.
Man, they're actually going around now.
Is this animal control staffing facility?
Yeah, it's both. It could be. I'm sorry?
Okay, that was maybe.
Flood control, I mean, you can put two on, yeah, you have one on, your yellow.
We
What's
can
that?
do that, so it's like, we're not talking about replacing the whole building.
No, well, those buildings are, we need to do some plumbing before we.
Where is that?
Things like that.
Oh, there you go.
We got 120 grand.
One more.
Only call that big, we got $500,000 for the building we own.
Oh, gosh.
Because the gas line and all of that, we can find reasons on through that.
Okay, perfect. So I'll hang up this and call you again, so you just on video.
I want one more ball, if you take this one off. No, really, because it says facility there, that's the same as the.
Yeah,
over there.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, no, I have it over there.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, well, that's twice for it.
Yeah, we wouldn't,
Yeah. Here.
Yeah, there's no,
Exit off with the marker.
Hello?
okay, you're back on just, voice.
Okay.
You wanna?
Okay, so the obvious,
What you don't want.
so let's go to the obvious, which are five.
Yeah, well, why not?
They're making some changes.
Okay. Okay, we good?
Yep.
So the obvious. Lucky Park Pool is a big priority. Some more COVID relief. I see that as a priority, and again, that starts in July. So we're gonna, try to do something that, has the money available there.
well, I think that one, in my mind, Frank, is this new stimulus bill that's coming from the federal government is more that, I don't know how, we don't have resources to, out of our regular fund. But I think my reason for putting it up was because if there's stimulus funds coming out, then we should prioritize some of that money like we did last time. I'm not sure if I'm willing to do out of our general fund budget.
And this just gives us a guidance, because our next step is gonna be, after this, one thing that, and I think we have a little bit of time, again, I wanted to power through this to give you, respect your time, is to talk about what do we do next. So that kind of.
You have a question?
I had a comment on that.
Okay.
What maybe we can do instead of just money is think about staff skills, put it out into the general public. With the money the city gave, the matching money the county gave, the restaurants, I had to help a total of 5 restaurants. They didn't understand the paperwork, language barriers, just about their skill set. So maybe not necessarily just money, but we go out and put these people in touch with the resources that are available from the county, the state, and the feds.
Good point. But like the grant programs, right, it was kind of complex, right?
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was interesting to say the least, and I want to say I'm only a 50% savvy computer person, but if somebody has no skill, like Eli just talking about, they would not be able to do it. I had to have my wife sit right next to me so we could go get the download, and it wouldn't come, anyway, it took basically 2 of us to get it all done.
Good point. So what else?
There is a comment, but I'm not sure, it's from Sean Michael again, I'm not sure the context of it. If public outreach is not a priority, how will you get volunteers to help and coordinate with nonprofits, schools, retired, seniors, and neighborhoods? Please read out loud what you decide.
Well, I guess if somebody's looking at this from the camera and seeing the docs, they have to understand that we understand, and our perspective, like, I didn't put any on the Utah specific plan. We know that eventually that is gonna get, we're gonna do that. Animal control staffing, I didn't put any there because that's an analysis that the city's gonna be doing as staff. Because then they'll come back to us later and say, well, this is what we can afford. No, we can't afford, this is what we just have to deal with. We have to move staffing from another department to help them, those kind of things. So that's kind of my reason why you don't see any of my stickers on some of the things that I know that as internally, we're going to do. So I just, as far as the public, if you understand where my stickers didn't go, I know where we're going to do, in the public outreach. You know, we publicize meetings, we put them in all the, social medias. Park and Rec does a great job of trying to get out everything to other people. And that's probably why why I didn't put any sticker, because I know what we're doing. We can't drag people into the building, and Frank made a good point about the dog park. We had lots of folks that come to the podium and said they were gonna volunteer and would help out, and, it really hasn't come to fruition on that part, so thank you, John, for your comment.
Can I say something too?
Yeah. Great.
And I think it's important that people understand also that we put it up there because it's a priority to us, and just because it doesn't have a dock doesn't mean it's not gonna get looked at. So.
Yeah, and it's an excellent point. I mean, a lot of these things are just part of what we do every day. It just maybe not rise to the level, but it's still part of the calculus that staff goes through, but just doesn't rise to that high level.
That's a good point, Richard. You didn't raise your hand though. Last night you were raising your hand. You don't have to ask me, you can take it.
So another, priority, and I know a question was asked, updating and looking at infrastructure, adding features was a priority out there that does, also match over to the animal control building, that's out there. So what else is obvious? Any other fives? Housing is obvious.
Off-road, looks like, off-road vehicle and public safety.
Where's, the top here?
No, public safety.
Public safety. Oh, I missed it. There's only four. I was going to the fives.
Oh, okay.
But four is definitely going to be there too. See, any other fives? Veteran services is a five.
And staff training.
Diversity. You got 5 up there.
Is there five they want to see?
Yeah.
Diversity place, their dogs.
Yeah, I made that comment. Put them all over the place.
Okay, so that's in no particular order. 1, 2, 3. And it's always the proverbial top 10, right? There's, could be plus or minus. 5, 6, 7. Okay, so now if you look at fours, light path looks like a 4.
Now that yellow one's hard to see.
Yeah.
Off-road enforcement.
Off-road enforcement's a 4. Vacation home rentals is a 4.
Healthcare district collaboration's a 4.
Tear down dilapidated structures,
Tear down.
tear down.
I think we talked about this, right, that but that doesn't come under COVID, right?
I'm sorry?
Tear down the building, does that come under COVID?
Tear down buildings, well, that's for, so we do have, like, code enforcement, like, we're going now on Adobe, right? We're tearing down buildings outside of COVID.
Well, I was talking about, we had the program once that if you came to us and said, tear it down now, with no questions, just, it was like, sometimes they were $30,000, $40,000 to tear the thing down. but there was, basically the paperwork was, they signed it over for us to tear it down. Then the landowner got the building removed.
Yeah, so there's, so part of code enforcement, they, trying to think of the constitutional amendment, they waived their, there's a form that they waived the rights, basically allowing us to go on and tear it down.
Right.
It's gonna, we tell those people, it's gonna cost you more, because we gotta pay prevailing wage. I mean, you can do that, sometimes people just don't have the money and just whatever, but, so we'll lien that property,
Right,
It's gonna-
no, I don't remember all the exact process, but we didn't do it ourselves. But it was, we got it done, I mean, we paid for them to do it. That's what you're talking about, so they could just hire the contractor, not us.
It's cheap, yeah, it's cheaper for them to
Right.
do that, yeah. Because we're prevailing wage and it's gonna be 30%
Well,
more.
the whole purpose was obviously to streamline it so that it would get done, we had, at that time, there was a bunch of pretty bad buildings that were pretty visual, and then those are the ones that got torn down, there's like, 8 of them.
And we can, and we've done this in the past, we can bring our top 10 list, if you will, of most blighted properties in the city, and you may see things that we don't have, or vice versa, that we could, have that priority list, so.
Hey, real quick while you're talking, should we take technology down and have another sheet of paper up there and have,
Write these all?
those results on there so we can see it on one sheet instead of 7 or 8?
Read all the top 12 for the record.
Yeah, we'll put it on one sheet.
Or ask you to read them out loud.
Okay, sure.
They can't see them.
So I'm just gonna,
If you wanna read them off to me.
yeah, so Carrie, if you could, where did we leave on, 7, I think? What was the last
7
one?
of the top 5, yeah.
So 7, 8,
So I would start, Carrie, with staff training. It's
9,
right next to you, you can kind of look at it. Even just staff training is good enough.
10,
I did.
yes, 11, 12.
Then we have,
So we'll, to the public, we're gonna read them all off, we're just getting them a little organized right now. I'm sorry.
recognize diversity,
Yeah, no particular order.
add events.
We'll do tear down, dilapidated structures.
I thought we were doing the top 5 and then one with 5 and then the 4s.
Well, there's in no particular order, so the 4s and the 5s are all on the list, but those really are in no particular order.
But
That's okay.
fives have priority over 4s, correct?
They'll all be part of the top 10. Yeah, all part of the top 10. So staff will look at these and, these will all filter into our resource allocation. Unless, I mean, again, it's all up to the council. Do you want to prioritize?
Go ahead and do it. Maybe after each one, you can put the number, associated with it.
Diversity. And we'll talk about next steps, Councilmember Ogilvy, and maybe that's something that, healthcare district collaboration.
Don't visit veterans.
Veterans, yep.
You just
lay a flat right there.
Put it up on the wall, it might be easier, wouldn't writing on the wall.
Is it easier, is it okay to write on the wall, or if you want to put it flat?
It doesn't matter, I'm easy.
Because we are going to do this, right?
Housing,
Okay, so veteran services, what was that at?
Just one last one.
So we got housing,
Mm-hmm.
here, and vacation home rental.
Okay.
Off-road enforcement.
Next.
COVID relief,
Next.
bike paths.
Okay.
Updating infrastructure and facilities. Then Lucky Park Pool.
Okay.
That should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 12. So for the public, I know you've.
Can you straighten that paper?
Is it crooked?
Yeah. Thanks.
I don't know, Mr. Mayor, you want to read them to the public?
Appreciate it.
Okay, in no particular order, we just, these are the ones that got 5 stickers and 4 stickers, that will rise to up the top of staff's consideration and our consideration. The vacation rentals, obviously, that's come to, when we talked about it a couple of months ago, but it's gonna be an ongoing discussion. Off-road enforcement, basically, what we're talking about there is we've had some pretty, I guess, serious violations of the off-road enforcement. So we're gonna be looking more into that. COVID relief, the federal government's talking about having, bringing money out, the new bill that's coming out, so we're gonna allocate some of those funds if they're available to us. Bike paths, we wanna expand those in certain areas in town. Updated infrastructure and facilities, obviously that's just, some of the recreational, parts of that, or just updating our regular facilities. And sometimes with folks, you need to just let us know, those things that you want. We've had, Curry said that, some people have been talking about tennis courts, pickleball courts, and things like that. So sometimes you just need to send us an email to one of your council members or to City Hall, and then it does get to us. So just, if you want to make, comments, please do. Lucky Park Pool, it was built in the 50s, and I didn't even know that it was a pool built on top of a pool. The infrastructure of that it needs to be addressed, but at some point, we're gonna have to do something with our pool. Staff training, we want to keep that ongoing and possibly, work in some, compensations on the training. Tear down our old buildings. As you can see in town, some buildings literally need to be torn down and so sometimes it's easier to, build new buildings around a building that's been torn down. So that's where we're working with that. Recognize at diversity events. Obviously our city is very diverse, but we want to add more events that encompass everyone, not just certain groups. Healthcare district, collaboration, we'd like to get, some kind of urgent care, possibly get an urgent care or some more health, programs here in the city so that we can, we don't have to travel down to Yucca Valley or down the hill. Veteran services, that's something that we've had on there for as long as I've been on the council, and it just continues to grow. And obviously that one got a 5. We just want to make sure that we're, continuing outreach for those services. And housing is the last one, I think. Housing is the last one. Obviously that ties into the vacation rentals. We have, need for housing in the city, and we just want to make sure we stay on top of that and maybe have programs out there that help builders come in and, build more housing in Pine Farms.
So just to acknowledge some of these, interesting and just interesting. And I think it's even to the topic of before, they're naturally going to go and maybe didn't rise to a strategic level, but like Project Phoenix, we're still doing it, right? I mean, I know it's important to the council. It's moving forward. Wastewater was another one I think somewhat interesting, not on the strategic list, but nonetheless we're moving forward. But that's still important to the council. I just want to clarify that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, and I think that's what some of the comments we were making. We understand like animal control staffing. Some of the folks, cross them out because we know that's going to be an internal staff discussion, analysis, and then you'll come back to us on what the results are. So it was really, in my opinion, there wasn't really a reason to put it on, but there's, obviously all these things are concerns.
And truly, this session that we had is an exercise to have the time away from more than a 2-hour council meeting with very specific items. We talked about a lot of things, right? So we heard a lot of things from the staff, was important. hopefully from the public, those who participated, kind of hear, some of the things, the dialogue that the council has. And this is a roadmap for us, but again, all those other things are equally as important. Just, a couple things here. So short and long term, I think, is important. And I just want to, the vacation home rental, this is, and I'm just going to say yes. That's a short, we're going to get that done soon, right? That's, some of these may be an ongoing, may take a longer time frame.
Some of those are not gonna entail any money either.
Yeah, that's true. Like this, yeah. There's no money here, right? That'll be a short-term project. Well, it's interesting. You could, like vacation rentals, yes, it won't take staff time, but there could be a financial impact to it. So meaning, and it's just the fiscal reality of it, right? If we limit, let's say, and I think this has got to be, just from the manager, and I get the council's, you got to take quality of life and everything into consideration, but just from a manager's perspective, the finance side of it, limiting it probably costs the city money. And the reason I say that is, just like Uber, if you got rid of Uber or limited Uber, that's just a new way of people traveling, right? Meaning getting their cars. It's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna help the taxi cab industry. And I think it's the same for vacation home rentals. If you are a person who wants a vacation home rental and the city, doesn't have any available, you're just gonna go to Joshua Tree, right? I think it's just a reality. They're not gonna go stay in a hotel. I think that if you want a vacation home rental, that's what you're gonna do. But so I think there's potentially a fiscal impact to that, meaning result of that. Off-road enforcement, I think that's a short-term one as well. And to Joel's point earlier, there could be dollars associated with that.
Or we just, move dollars around.
True.
It doesn't cost us extra dollars, so we just, and obviously it's the same as public safety. I mean, if we're keeping folks safe, because, obviously some of the cases we've been hearing are been very rude.
So the traffic cop, right? So, I don't know, I'll talk to the captain about that.
Yeah, how we can,
And
if
if
you'd like to get on a motorcycle or side by side and run around.
And some of these are really difficult too, right? Is there a more of an impact on the off-road vehicle side versus people speeding through our city?
Well, like I would say, this doesn't have to be, it can be a short, they say, a short solution,
Yeah.
because we get rid of the folks that are doing it wrong, or we just, maybe doesn't have to do it. I'm definitely not talking about doing it every day. That's not good for the resources.
So COVID relief, sure, that'll be something this year, right? And, could be money, I think, Eli gave a great scenario potentially that could, be just services, not just free money. So I think that may be a little bit of both. Bike pass, we got 3 bike pass, it is mentioned before, we got Amboy, we got, the 2 safe routes to school, the ATP projects, which are, on 2 mile, from Adobe to, Utah. Then, by Oasis, we have, an El Paseo, that one, along with the Channel Trail.
We also have, Hatch and Sullivan that we put on hold that needs to go back up there.
Okay, so that'll be dollars, so.
And long term.
Yeah, because all the others that I just mentioned don't have, or have funding already associated with them. Sullivan, definitely the council has talked about that, we defunded that, but that's gonna have dollars. Updating infrastructure and facilities, lots been talked about. There's many things, the big one probably is the animal control building, which, and this doesn't talk about, the quarantine building. This is just the current building, and, I think we have, 50 grand, 30 grand, I can't remember now.
We had 30, then we did the new refrigeration unit and the electrical upgrade that was required to power that, 3-phase that we're working on now. So we'll have about 15,000. We realistically need a minimum of 100 to 150,000 just to upgrade, repair, and get the regular buildings back where they need to be.
So that's a short-term one, and that's a dollar one too, and that's just animal control, and I know in hearing some of the things with Lucky as well, so that's, you know, we'll kind of work through that. Lucky Park Pool, this is long, this is not short, this will be long term. We won't get this, done over the next 2 years, so we'll have to, you know, what do we say about numbers probably, think $500,000?
Somewhere in that range, based on a couple of pool contractors I talked to.
Yeah, we get about $140,000 a year.
Yes.
So, you know, if we just wait to pay, you know, pay as you go, if you will, which means, you know, banking or CDBG dollars, you know, that's 3+ years, you know, to accumulate enough money. And maybe we have general fund money to augment with CDBG money. We did that with Lucky Park Avenue, actually. We used general fund money and CDBG money for Lucky Park Avenue. But bottom line here is, it's probably a long-term one, it's not a short-term one. So we'll have daily wire and duct tape, you know, I guess, are we gonna make it, daily wire and duct tape over the next couple of years?
We just gotta get the plumbing is a big concern right now,
I think
the
that would be,
acid.
yeah, priority number one is.
I think this would be a good time to use some of our, reserve money, and then in the long run, take that $140 every year and pay it back. Because that needs to be done if there's, plumbing and electrical involved. I don't want to be sitting in there and.
Well, I was just gonna make that comment. Yeah, let's get a more solid estimate. Let's find out exactly what it is. I agree with Councilman.
We ran into an issue, to be honest with the council, with the demolition. When I talked to the contractors, because of that pool inside of a pool, they were really kind of wanting to do a time and materials on that, because they don't know what they're gonna get into as they start excavating out the existing structure. What they're gonna run into, it didn't make sense to any of them I talked to, they kind of all did a double thing. What'd you say? There's a pool inside of a pool. And that came from Randy Council. There was an issue with the cracking in the original pool, so they filled in a couple feet of dirt and poured a new pool inside of it. And attached the plumbing through it, and what's happened with leaks over the years is the plumbing is shifted. And because the ground is shifted. So there's a lot of other things that need to happen around there as well, not just the pool.
Well, if you get us a pretty close estimate on how much everything will cost to put a new pool in there and get rid of all the problems.
What about the, like the shower and all that stuff? Is that the change?
That all needs, it doesn't meet the requirements as well. The eye wash stations don't meet the safety requirements, all of it.
I mean, as far as that build, can the building part be?
The building could be used, it would need to, the add-on would need to be redone. Currently, chemicals are stored in places that necessarily they shouldn't be. So we need to do some upgrades to the structure as well as.
And back to efficiency, and I'm sorry, council member, back to efficiency, there's probably waste, I don't know, maybe waste is a poor choice of words, but it's a drain on staff time, you know, dealing with all the things that otherwise could be automated. So there's an impact to, a more efficient system to less staffing. Well, I shouldn't say less staffing, more efficient staffing.
So that's one of the things I was gonna say, we could learn a lesson from Base with Lake Bandini, because you said last night how much money they lose on trying to maintain.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's why they need new. So, I mean, we could actually be losing money trying to maintain instead of just doing new.
I mean, do we have an estimate of like, what we spend on duct tape and baling wire each year? I mean, it's probably.
Well, that'd be good to put in your report, because then that would,
Yeah.
because obviously we still have to, we have to be prudent to be our citizens and let them know, like, this is why we want to do this, because it's costing us $100,000 a year to keep this thing running, but if we put in a $500,000 pool, it's only gonna cost us $30,000 from now on. I mean, in 5 years, we'll save the cost of the pool.
Yeah.
It will be hard to kind of show that in a historical analysis, because for years Larry and Kevin and Park and Rec staff did all that maintenance on their own, did those upgrades on their own. Even when they contracted like Lefty Pools to do some work, they did a portion of the work. And so there's no real record of a lot of that as I looked into this before, but I mean, I'll do my best to bring everything I can forward.
Well, I know, last year I saw the pipe leak people were there for 3 or 4 days, and that had cost us a bunch of money. I meant to ask when I used to be able to coach softball, I got to see those folks down there for 3 or 4 days, and I
It's
know that.
about $1,400 to first time. And then the second time they came, it was about $300 to $500. So it's, you know, every time somebody has to come out and do something, it costs us money.
Right.
You know, and it's not an efficient system. You know,
And-
we've done upgrades, but they're Band-Aids is what they are.
And from a safety evaluation, we're seriously deficient in a lot of areas that we should not be. We haven't had hot showers there for years, we haven't had hot water, or eye flushing, there's a lot of things that, you know, we've gone along with just to keep the facility open, but we really need to step up our game.
Okay. Yeah, I think we got a consensus to bring that back to us.
So that probably changes from,
ASAP.
yeah, you know, long, short, and dollars. We'll go short.
So can I ask, just for when I go to the contract, is this something you want to go through this swim season that's upcoming and then have construction begin in the fall? If we do bring this forward and then something, because contractors want to know a timeline, they want to know what they're bidding, when the timeframe's gonna be.
You know, I would say, let's just, if we decide to do this right away, let's get on it and do it, because we're still in COVID. Who knows if they're gonna allow us to open up pool for the summertime? At least people know that it's getting done and we'll still look forward to 2022.
And so staff will talk
That's
about,
my suggestion.
yeah, staff will talk about it and bring it back, and then there's obviously, you know, the chances are by summer, and when we, Memorial Day?
Yes,
So when's Memorial Day, June?
it's the
May.
last weekend of May.
So, you know, we're basically in February. There is no way, I don't think.
I don't think, most of those guys already have their seasons booked. The bigger pool contractors I talked to at Coachella, Indio, and Riverside, that I called out last time.
Unless you want to miss a swing season, which I don't think you probably want to do you?
Well, either way, you're gonna miss the swim season, if you do it
Yeah.
now or you do it later.
Oh, you think it'll take at least 12 months to?
I would think,
I would
probably,
think.
Yeah.
yeah.
Got a lot of.
Well, there,
extra-
you know, when it's too cold, they're gonna have to let the concrete cure, and, you know, gun ice, things like that.
So staff will bring us, let us, you know, we know it's a priority, we'll talk about it and figure out how we go forward. Staff training, you know, although we do have some training dollars in there, and I just want to clarify that, you know, maybe more enhancement of it, more than just training, maybe education. Is that where you were, because I think Mac, you brought it up originally, education, because we do training, and that will still continue to be a strategic priority, because we need to train our staff.
Well, yeah, I brought it up because of, I remember before you talked about, you know, cross-training and basically developing the staff within, you know, instead of having to always go out and recruit,
Yeah.
you know, have people move up, which I think we do a pretty good job at.
So can I add like education to this?
Yes.
Tear down dilapidated buildings, and so this will be short-term, and this will cost money. Tear down dilapidated, structures, this is definitely short-term. This may not cost, and what we're talking about is general fund money. I didn't see what the latest update, we had $100,000, I think Danny, Mayor was referencing, the council put some money, way before. We had $100,000 at one point. We've been tearing stuff down and doing stuff. I'll have to check to see what the balance there is. There may be some money, you know, here to do that, but it also may need some general fund money as well. We'll have to see. We'll ultimately probably bring a top 10 list to the council, so you can see maybe what our priorities are that we see anyway, kind of go from there. Diversity, events, so, you know, that will be something, you know, it'll cost staff time, probably, you know, insignificant dollars probably, right? So we can do this short term and just add,
Mac raising his hand.
oh, sorry.
I had to go back to that, tear down dilapidated structure. I remember, we had a Boy Scout that was trying to get his
Oh,
Eagle
yeah.
Scout. And they did a study on buildings
Right.
throughout the city. I mean, we could do something like that too.
Yeah,
And that gets the community involved.
a little different. So Larry Bowden did that with that Boy Scout. It was an economic development. So it wasn't really tear down. It was, you know, how many buildings we had vacant. And,
Yeah, okay. They could do one like that. buildings that need to be torn down?
Staff's got a pretty good idea on that one. It's definitely a point taken, and we'll see if there's a community service aspect of it. But I think staff has got, a pretty good idea of, what needs to be turned down. Diversity events, short-term, minimal dollars, adding recognition, and maybe work with the school districts on recognition of diversity and promoting diversity. And I know this is one of the things that I think I talked to Mayor Pro Tem Ogilvy about, of, going through that social unrest that we saw throughout this country. What steps can we do to really recognize and promote and show our unity, within our community? Because I think we're different, we feel different, because we're this melting pot here in 29 Palms. So, but we need to celebrate that. Healthcare district, and it's interesting, these two, probably by no intention, but there may be some overlap even here too, working with the healthcare district on some veteran services. So, although two separate, distinct, and that doesn't cost money, that's short-term collaboration. And veteran services, I think that probably short-term as well, as we saw with the library. That was, having the library work for some funding sources to be able to recognize that, maybe some fairs and other things to kind of bring those services to fruition or public consumption. Same with the healthcare district collaboration. I don't think there's money associated with that. The healthcare district did that Split Rock facility most recently, and maybe, they get, and Mayor Pro Tem maybe can help me with this. I think they get, through the lease of the hospital to tenant, I think they get like $2 million a year or something like that. And they got a lot of things that they got to do with it, pay staff for one, but also two, there's, some expansion and growth associated with it. So there may be some opportunities there that I'll talk to them about. We'll work through them. Then finally is housing. This is probably longer term. It takes some time to go through the process. We're going to be awarding, I'll breathe again, take this off, sorry. We're going to be awarding, probably the first quarter of this year, a low-bond housing developer, working through the acquisition of those properties that the council's been talking about, working with the MBTA, getting the financing set on building those housing. So that's probably, longer than a 2-year horizon that we're currently looking at. So I'll just, if it's done sooner, great, but I think it's probably going to be more long term.
I think too with the housing, like Danny and I said, earlier we had infill,
Okay.
where we would waive the fee, some fees in there so that, we can get the neighborhoods filled up. And then at the same time, to get the curb gutter sidewalk for the whole block instead of waiting for order to get that done.
For infill. So one of the things that staff is working on for infill, so residential very specifically, and maybe it speaks to this. So we're working on our the in-lieu fee that we have. I think you probably, as a council, kind of heard people complaining about that. Was $100 or $77 per linear foot. So most people pay this $11,250 max for curb gutter and sidewalk. And so as a process that we're working through to add an impact fee, that impact fee may be, I'm making up a number, we're still going through the process, maybe $5,000 that would be lower than $11,250. And, for rural areas, if you will, when there's nothing on the street, it doesn't make any sense to really pay that fee because you're not going to have curb gutter and sidewalk. Infill, though, on the other hand, if you're, I just want to talk through this, make sure we're all on the same page. House, and you got curb gutter and sidewalk on both sides. We're going to make you put it in the middle. But the rural area is kind of what we're working on to be able to waive that, I guess, if you will, not have to require that. Does that kind of sound like something that you were talking about?
There's more fees, different fees that they,
Okay.
Well, no,
waive.
that's one fee I don't think we can waive it.
Yeah,
That's curb and gutter, but we're talking about, the permit fee. it just would cost us money, because we have to end up paying it, but it just,
But in the long run, now we have a house
Now
up
we got a
there,
house,
we're
we're
getting
gonna get
taxes, property taxes, so it's
Okay, so
a
we'll,
win-win for both.
and you're talking just infill?
Yeah,
just them.
just infill.
That sound like priorities that the council, and to it, even a question, has this been a good, helpful session? You know, I think the pool has been probably an enlightening conversation, and other things that probably maybe you were somewhat aware of and now you're more aware of. So is that your top 10 list? And was this session useful, although very inconvenient? I get it during the Friday and Saturday, but was there some benefits that came from it?
And I don't think,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think any of us really mind getting up a Friday or Saturday morning. I mean, it's something that's necessary.
It's every other year, so it's not.
Yeah, I mind it, but it was
You're
necessary.
not fair.
It was necessary, but, no, some of these other things, you know, because I think it's important that the community knows, they could be on like future agenda items and stuff like that too, right?
They could be. I just want to make sure, you're right, absolutely, 100% they could be on future agenda items. But for resource planning, that's why this is so important, because we're going to go down this list of, you know, of budgeting and paying for it. And if these things come up, and they can come up, right, they definitely can come up, it just creates, a situation that, we got to find money for those, because now and I got to say, most of these, or some of these are going to be a stretch even to pay for all of themselves. So then when you add something else on top of that, that just exacerbates the problem, which may tie back over to the revenue enhancements. But,
Yeah, but like, for example, fire prevention fee review.
oh, yeah, that'll just, that stuff that doesn't cost money, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Cannabis as well, could be.
Yeah.
Oh,
Policy,
I think.
Yeah, we have a comment. Go ahead.
Shawn Michaels said, sort of relating to the curb better sidewalk, charge the money and save it for when you have a block.
Yeah, that's actually what we do now, Sean. Yeah. Well, we're talking about the infield is, some kind of program, we, waived the permit fee, to actually build the house. We can't waive, like, they still have to pay the school district fees and things like that, but we're talking about the fees they pay us. But no, the curb and gutter fee will still have to be paid because that goes into the infrastructure. But thank you for your comment.
so Mayor, staff has our direction, and if the council wants to talk anymore.
I'm good. I think we've talked a lot, I mean, quite open conversation, I do appreciate everybody being here.
I think we should save all these papers. Hey, storage, you know, hey, that's right.
Do you see my desk,
No,
my
we don't.
table in there, it's got from prior years, so yeah, we keep,
Yeah.
Can take photos.
Oh, yes, that's right, we take photos. There you go.
back, yeah, good point.
Yep, and then, you know, when we get one done here, maybe we can add one to the list on the bottom and keep going on. Because there are still some up there that probably need to be looked at.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to the staff and, thank, Pizza Hut for the meal last night and, Farmers Market for the breakfast this morning. They were good.
And Councilman Wright, thank you for that. You see, Carrie and Eli, but also too online, you've had other staff members, been watching, because again, this is, a good process for them and for all of us, to watch. So I think there's been several other staff members. I know Cindy Viescas,
Travis, Craig, Jacqueline, Rick, and Brianne today.
That's all they're part of, so I do, yes, staff, thank you very much. Those are online, because obviously you have to sit in front of that. It's actually, to me, it's a Zoom meeting at home, to me, is not even as, engaging as being in person. In fact, the MBTA, we're gonna start taking turns meeting in bigger places, because they've been doing it Zoom, and we're just gonna start either doing it 29 or Yucca Valley until, the COVID is over, because their facility isn't quite big enough. So we're gonna start using this one and Yucca Valley on an alternate basis, just so we can get together. So it's, I do appreciate your time sitting in front of the computer, because I don't enjoy, home Zoom meetings myself, so.
We also got say thank you for those that commented and for the citizens that are online. Thank you for your interest in the city, and, nice to get more people, but I think once we get through the COVID and we can meet on a regular basis in-house, I hope that, we have more participation in our meetings from our citizens. We are working for you to make the city of Twin Palms a better place to live, and, we need your input. So, thank you very much for being there today and your comments. We appreciated it last night. Thank you.
Say something. Thanks to everyone, especially the staff, and, as Joel said, the citizens of 29 Palms, which is the real reason why we do this. I mean, this is like our reasonable service. This is the least that we can do, is to try and, make our city better and try and make our city government function and run, as smoothly as possible.
Steve, you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, like everyone else said, thanks to the staff and everyone for all the hard work getting us together. And now it's just action time. You know, we talk about all the things we want to do, but when we write it out on paper, now it's a goal. So now just action. And I know we're going to do it. I know the staff is committed to it. So I look forward to accomplishing goals in the next 2 years until the next meeting. That's all I got.
Thank you, Steve.
Comment from Sean. Michael, thank you and be safe.
Oh, well, thank you, Sean. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you, staff, and we're done.
All right.